We are alive. Great. Hello and welcome. So Zvi is an engineer, seasoned entrepreneur, strategist, and a startup advisor. I'm super excited to speak to Zvi today. We align on the mission statement almost directly. After selling his last company, Contactually, a relationship-oriented CRM, to Compass in 2019, Zvi is now grinding on a glorious trifecta of products, Camp Social, Good Sphere, and Relatable, ultimately to bring humanity back together. Before we get more into Zvi and his impressive portfolio, I want to ask you, Zvi, how are you, really?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, I'm grateful to be here, truly grateful. And I have a lot of things to be grateful for, but especially to be talking to you, especially someone who shares our vision. I have a little bit of a neck ache. It is late in the day, but my kids started school today and they both got home safe and sound and bubbling with everything like that. Love the projects I'm working on despite the challenges. So I would say I am truly great today.
Wow, that sounds like a big day for your kids. And also, I guess as a parent, it must be extremely nerve-wracking sending your kids away on their first day. So I'm glad that you're well. Always something to be grateful about. So yeah, let's get into it. I mean, how did you fall down the rabbit hole from your extensive background in building products and I guess nurturing relationships before? Can you recount your journey into this space for us?
Yeah, it's interesting, it because it's not like a clean, like, one single moment. I remember I was speaking at a conference in probably about 2010, and the presenter after me was this real like neck birdie dude, like talking about like some weird system of like money and crypto math and everything like that. And only years later, I was like, oh my God, that dude was talking about Bitcoin back in 2010. If only I had like listened to him, right? And I've been like, I've been early Ethereum and Bitcoin investor just as a like, hey, this seems interesting. Why not? A lot of my friends, were into ICOs in 2018. I was like, no, that's all, garbage. I started personally getting involved in Web3 really in like 2021. First in like, doing some like DeFi yield farming. I think DeFi is fascinating, and I started really going down like the yield farming rabbit hole a little bit too much, and we could talk about that at some point. But to me, what really like crypto pilled me, for lack of a better term, was with Camp Social. I really had developed like two key theses through my exploration. One is that we need new systems and new organizations that are more collectivist versus extractive of members. And second is that we need new incentive structures to really guide pro-social human behavior. And those two map, I think, very cleanly towards what we're seeing with DAOs and tokenomics. And so that was like the, oh my God, wow, this is really cool moment for me.
Incredible. I think DeFi is a great way to get involved. I think that's the case for a lot of people. They see what decentralization can do to firstly I guess the core of our world today, right? Finance. And then they're like, oh wait, there's this whole other layer. We can integrate it into our community and the social fabric of how people get along. And they're like, whoa, all right, this is it. And I feel like that was your aha moment there as well.
Yeah, and I think like I believe like one of the big issues in our world is like misalignment of incentives. That especially like we operate a lot on like zero sum games, and so therefore like if someone is making a dollar, someone is losing a dollar, and at least with DeFi, at least like some of the things in DeFi. There are obviously a lot of things that are just very clouded and shady and not actually like decentralized as we're seeing. But where at least like incentives and how the mechanics work are at least like clearly laid out for people, like, you know, services like Compound, you're like, oh, cool. I understand how it works. There's no middleman with weird interests and everything like that. To me, that's really exciting. So yeah, I oftentimes tell people if they're starting to like try and explore, just play around with like a DeFi protocol and just like see how it works.
That's fascinating. So, so if someone was to ask you, you know, crypto or Web3 is just so foreign to me, right? And you're trying to crypto pill them with this human element. How would you describe that to someone? You know, what would you say, you know, Web3 is a human because space? How would you fill that gap?
Yeah, it's a really great question. The way I would explain it is that Web3 at least brings a lot of extreme transparency, you know, into the public, you know, into the public eye in terms of like how protocols work, who owns what. And I do believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. So at least you understanding like how it works, and who owns what, it at least clearly illuminates like incentives and provides a lot of like really interesting new social mechanics, right?
Right.
So for example, you know, NFTs, and I don't actually spend a lot of time in NFTs, but this idea of like, okay, there's a certain number and programmatically, you know, there's a certain number and here's who owns this and here's how much it is sold for. That's very different than like, you know, other collectibles markets, right? And that kind of information symmetry creates a lot of really interesting social dynamics. So that is what really excites me.
Awesome. Do you think that that transparency that's, you know, enabled by technology aligns maybe our incentives a little more? I know you spoke about that's like the main problem that a lot of us misalign. Do you think transparency leads to that, or is that, you know, how are those two linked?
Yes, I do believe so. Like at a very root level, right? If like people, despite all of, you know, the bad PR and everything like that, most people, because it's not front and center, don't really fully grasp what, you know, a lot of major Web2 platforms are doing with their data, right? And they're pretty upfront and honest about it, right? Like, you know, there's data brokers and data is being sold and used for targeting and everything like that. But if people really truly understood this is how my data is being used on a regular basis and how much money services are making off of me, the average, for example, American consumer, they would be terrified and shocked, right? And so to me, at least bringing more transparency in terms of like how information is being used and ownership of information, to me, that we obviously have to see, this is still very early innings, but I do believe it's going to create these like really interesting angles that we have yet to fully explore.
Totally. I share that excitement with you. And yeah, I'm excited to see more people like you doing cool stuff in the space to lead to that. I want to touch on this quote that I read on your portfolio.
Yes.
It seems like your motto, you know, relationships are the most important asset. And you know, I have to say it's undeniably exemplified by what you've done in your career so far. I feel like this is something that's drilled into everyone from a very young age, you know, whether it's in school or our parents tell us so. But what is it about your upbringing or your trajectory that has made this particular statement so important to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be honest, I didn't really value it, right? I never invested in community. I was kind of a lonely kid. There were a couple communities that like meant a lot for me, like a fraternity in college, but I graduated college and I just took the first job took the first job I had and said like, all right, I'm going to be a software developer and just going to continue just like doing this and rise in the corporate ladder. And they told me to network. And I was like, yeah, but I don't network. You know, for me, like, I believe that like just the merit of my work would just be enough. Right. But through a number of like experiences early on in my career, there was actually at one point back, and I think in like 2011, where I looked back and I was like, wow, every major opportunity in my life has come from, and I truly mean in my life, not just in my job or career, but in my life, has happened because I knew the right people, or the right people knew me. I built I became CTO of an enterprise software startup that's acquired. I built my own consulting firm, and all of our business came via referral. And even, my partner, who we ended up getting married, came via a community that we were a part of. And I was like, wow, yes, having good skills and knowledge, yeah, of course, that matters, and great values. But really, it's the relationships that we build. We are deeply social creatures. It's the relationships that we form. That is what really leads to an amazing life. And that was like the oh my God moment for me.
I love that. That's really beautiful to see that, how relationships have affected every single part of your life, whether it's personal or professional. And that makes me feel some type of way. I feel very grateful for everyone in my life, and just overwhelming with gratitude at this point. Do you think there is a secret sauce for people who, may have been in the same shoes as you? Maybe they had a not so, like, quite a bumpy ride growing up, or went into the professional space not knowing, how to make these relationships, or, what's one piece of advice you can give to people who might struggle with this aspect, who are early on in their career?
Yeah, and it's funny, it actually leads into like what we're talking about with Camp Social and what we're investing time in. I mean, the first and foremost is you will only be able to connect the dots looking backwards, not looking forwards, right? And that's like a Steve Jobs quote. But most importantly, don't just be the person that shows up, be the person that asks others to dance, right? Meaning, like, host dinners, host events, reach out to people. There's a lot of research that shows that, like, we think that, like, people don't want to see us or people don't want to hang out with us, but, like, no, like, people love being asked and invited to things. Create dinners, create cocktail parties. Be the person that initiates social connection and not just receive social connection.
Yeah, awesome. And that's definitely a great segue into Camp Social. So yeah, super exciting. Camp Social is a Web3 social platform. Tell us about it in one sentence, like an elevator pitch type.
Yeah, so very specifically, Camp Social strengthens communities by incentivizing, recognizing, and making it really easy for community members to self-organize their own social activities within that community.
I love it. And did the seed for Camp Social get, I guess, like, planted from your own experience participating in DAOs or even founding one yourself?
Yeah, I would say it's the intersection of a few different waves in my life. I definitely had been, as I thought about this next chapter of my life, I very much focused on this theme of bringing humanity back together again. Like, how do we make the world a less lonely place? And I'd done a lot of, like, weird rabbit holes, like product principles of religion and hyper individualism, all this kind of stuff. But I was looking to find problems, specific problems around loneliness, and solve them. And it specifically revolves around building stronger communities. Dovetailed with this exciting world I was seeing with digital communities, including like DAOs and other Web3 communities, and seeing how they frankly exhibited some of the best possible traits. And I do believe there's a lot of potential around DAOs, but also the worst, where you would have 2,000 people in a Discord server, which is basically like walking into a crowded bar and everyone's shouting at each other, and there's no way to build real relationships. So that's what kind of said, hey, there's clearly an opportunity here to strengthen communities. Let's figure out a way to do it.
Right. That's awesome. And I think a lot of people especially are bullish on Web3 because in this space, there essentially is no product without the community, right? And so I think going forward, one thing that, we can hop in and intervene in the pitfalls of Web too is that communities become very fragmented and, yeah, I guess bland. But yeah, our goal is to help strengthen them going forward so that this is the benchmark. Communities are tight knit, they're inclusive, and they're easy to, hop into and feel like you belong. Yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of like, and the interesting thing is, when approaching like Web3 communities, there's clearly an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and kind of revisit like how do we design really healthy communities, while at the same time not ignoring a lot of the research that's been done, which unfortunately I've seen happens a little bit too much. There is this concept of Dunbar's number that the human being can only maintain 150 relationships at any point in time. So sure enough, like when we enter a community, if it's 50 people, we can easily get to know people. But as it grows and grows and grows, I've seen many communities, to your point, become bland and fall apart because you lose that intimacy and you lose that social connection amongst people. And these are some of the big problems. And there are lots of good solutions out there, but they haven't really been translated to the digital space.
Totally. And so in terms of Camp Social, how are you planning on building the infrastructure to, I guess, deploy some of these great ideas or solutions to building better communities?
It's a great question. So it started off with a few key beliefs. One is that humans build relationships via shared experiences, specifically through conversation, right? Most of us don't build relationships just by jumping into a channel and seeing what people are chatting about and jumping in the conversation. That may work a little bit, but what's most important is we actually build these one-on-one relationships, and communities thrive on that, right? Churches have found, for example, that the retention rate of a member is directly correlated to the number of friends they make within the first 6 months, right? Google has found that psychological safety is the key indicator of team performance. And we build psychological safety through actually like knowing and trusting each other. So we start off with Camp Social with thinking about, okay, how do we do that, right, in the current context? And the other, and this is of course what we're talking about with tokenomics, is that incentives drive behavior. Right now, who has the incentive to host a conversation, host a social activity for a community? It might be like, some people do it just out of their own interests, like they just love meeting people and they'll reach out one-on-one, or it's the community leader who clearly like their own success of their role or the community and their ownership of it is reliant on the community coming together. So they host town halls for everyone or coffee meetups for everyone. Our thought is, well, let's really revisit what the potential of community is. And that's really where every community member feels they have the opportunity, the responsibility, and now like the incentive to do that. So in Camp Social, we have a Soulbound NFT that as you are hosting social activities, like whether it's a coffee meetup down the street from you in San Francisco or a 3-person conversation online, that is all tracked, and you get an NFT that accrues spirit points, which is like our reputation system. And that allows you to get recognized and even rewarded for that, because the community becomes stronger the more people meet each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I know that you've taken a few pivots with Camp Social. You're really taking the time to build this properly from the beginning so that it's able to, be deployed amongst DAOs. What does that look like in terms of your roadmap and the timeline? And which DAOs in particular are you planning on onboarding, or is there not really a selection process for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So where we're at right now, so we have a working alpha that we're piloting with a few communities right now. We're building up a allow list of probably around 10 initial communities that we'll bring on, and really trying to determine how best we can serve them. Is it and this is where we're kind of really in the primordial ooze. Is it we just give you the tool and saying, hey, here, use it? Is it we operate as more of like a managed service and we actually help strengthen communities, and our team is operating more as like a DAO to DAO partnership where our team is actually helping your team, better increase the density of relationships? Or is it going bottoms up and saying, hey, we're open up to any community and you can just self-organize without, kind of the direct involvement of, of a core committee or core team of a community? That's really what we're figuring out. I mean, for us, the kinds of communities that we're aiming for right now are ones that, to your point, they know that the community is the product, right?
Yeah.
And there are some, for example, a lot of DeFi protocols where the incentives are pretty straightforward. They don't frankly care or need a lot of deep social connection or social trust because everything is so clearly laid out for them that they just don't need that. But for most, especially social communities and PFP communities and NFT communities, this is where they're seeing that beyond having a good business model and a good treasury, it really is the strength of relationships and the density of that community becomes the key indicator.
Awesome. And for any DAO leaders or founders out there, say if they wanted to get involved in this alpha or perhaps when you release the beta, how can they get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I would say similar to most other Web3, Web3 projects. You can show up on our website. We have a Airtable form you can fill out if interested. You can just talk to us via Twitter DM. You can reach out to me. I'm very easy to find. You can drop into our Discord and just say hi and express interest in any way. So
awesome. All right. See, Zvi, my apologies. I always like to end my interviews with a fun section so the audience can get to know you a little more. So this is called Mint, Burn, or Rug. So I have three, I guess, projects, Web3 projects that I'm going to list. The first one is Nouns DAO, which is like an NFT project. The other is FWB, of course, the renowned social DAO. And lastly is the plot of land next to Snoop Dogg in the Sandbox metaverse.
Awesome. I love it. Let's see. So nouns, I would say Mint.
Okay.
I believe there's a tremendous opportunity behind NFTs. I for one, to be honest, I still don't fully get them. But I at least respect that, all right, I don't get it. There's something I'm not fully grokking, but a lot of my friends and colleagues are big believers in the space. So all right, cool, let's let that run. And Nouns, of course, being one of the ones that have really built a strong community. FWB membership, I'm still Mint. I'm a member. I know a lot of people are down on FWB, but I do believe that they're really at the forefront in trying to figure out how you be a DAO, how you build a strong community, how you support the arts and creators and everything like that. So I'm a very big believer. And the plot of land next to Snoop Dogg, Rug, absolutely. I'm both digital and physical real estate, I believe, is way too hot right now versus what it's actually worth. Whether it's in the metaverse, definitely, I'm not a big believer in metaverse real estate right now. And then physical real estate, again, we are entering a bear market. So I would say, you be wise to short it right now.
Love it. Thank you, Zvi. Where can we find you, lastly, other than Twitter?
I mean, luckily there's only one Zvi Band out there. My actual personal website is zvi.band, zvi.band. You can easily find me on various different social platforms, and then Camp Social is just camp.social.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zvi.